A silent wife, a hidden pregnancy, and one brutal choice at a lake reveal how emotional betrayal can destroy love, life, and a family forever. At first glance, the village looked peaceful, almost beautiful. Mud houses stood quietly in neat rows, their brown walls warmed by the sun. Narrow footpaths curved gently between homes, farms, and a clear stream where water shimmered softly in the light. Children ran barefoot across the dusty ground, their laughter floating freely in the air. Every evening, elders gathered beneath the old Aoko tree, telling stories of long ago, their voices calm, their faces wise. To an outsider, nothing seemed wrong. But peace can be deceptive. This was the Bald Village, a place where an ancient silence hid a terrible truth. In this village, no woman had hair. Not a single one. From the moment a baby girl was born, her head remained smooth and bare. No soft curls as an infant. No braids as a child. No flowing hair as a grown woman. Generation after generation, the women lived without hair, and no one questioned why. It was simply how things were. The women wrapped their heads in cloth, not out of shame, but out of habit. Mothers taught their daughters how to tie scarves before they taught them how to walk properly. Girls grew up never imagining what hair might feel like in the wind. They did not dream of it, because dreams require hope, and hope requires belief that something else is possible. And in this village, belief had long died. The elders said it was fate. The villagers called it tradition. Over time, the word curse faded into whispers, then into silence. Life continued as usual. Crops were planted. Meals were cooked. Songs were sung. The women laughed, worked, and lived their lives as if nothing had been taken from them. But something had been taken. Deep inside their hearts, many women felt a quiet ache they could not name. When they passed through nearby towns and saw women with long hair shining in the sun, they looked away quickly. Some felt sadness. Others felt envy. Most felt nothing at all, because feeling nothing hurt less. Who questions a fate they were born into? No one spoke of the origin anymore. No one dared to ask how it began. Asking questions in the Bald Village was dangerous. Questions led to memories, and memories led to guilt. So the village remained still, wrapped in acceptance. This is how it has always been, they told themselves. Until the day fate decided to speak again. Because curses do not last forever. And silence does not erase the truth. Sometimes, all it takes is one innocent soul to awaken what a whole village has tried to forget. The night Zara was born was unlike any other the Bald Village had ever seen. Lanterns flickered in the midwife's hands, casting long shadows on the walls of the small hut. A storm rumbled softly outside, as if the heavens themselves sensed something extraordinary was about to happen. Inside, Zara's mother writhed in pain, breathing heavily, while the village midwives whispered prayers over her. Then, a cry split the room, a strong, clear wail that immediately drew everyone's attention. When the midwife picked up the newborn, her hands trembled. Tiny strands of black hair covered the baby's head, thick and shining even under the dim lantern light. It was beautiful. It was impossible. And it was terrifying. "Have you ever seen such hair on a newborn?" one midwife whispered, her voice shaking. Fear laced her words, and the others nodded silently, unable to speak. The baby's hair seemed to glow, alive with a life of its own, falling over her small shoulders like a dark, silky crown. In that moment, the villagers realized something no one had dared to imagine: this child was different. But the joy of birth was short-lived. Within hours, Zara's mother grew pale, her breathing shallow, and her body stiffened. She died quietly, leaving the baby's cries echoing in the empty room. Panic filled the hearts of those present. They tried remedies, chants, and prayers, but nothing could bring her back. The young father, stricken with grief, barely had time to grieve before illness struck him too. No herbs, no charms, no tears could save him. He fell weaker each day, and soon, he too joined his wife in death. Zara was left alone, a tiny bundle of life in a world that had already turned its back on her. The midwives looked down at her with a mixture of awe and fear, unsure whether to celebrate her miraculous hair or mourn the tragedy surrounding it. Why me? The child might have wondered, though she was too small to understand her own fate. By tradition, she was sent to live with her closest relative, her Aunt Mama Vio. The journey to her new home was quiet, filled with whispers of fear and curiosity. Villagers glanced at her hair with awe, then quickly looked away, as if looking too long might invite disaster. Everyone understood, deep in their hearts, that Zara was not an ordinary child, and that her life, though fragile, carried a weight the village had never known before. That night, the wind howled outside, but inside, the tiny baby slept peacefully, her hair tumbling softly around her head. Unbeknownst to anyone, that small, innocent life would one day challenge the very curse that had held the village captive for generations. She was a spark, quiet but unyielding, waiting to ignite a change no one could yet foresee. Zara grew up unlike any other girl in the Bald village. From the moment she could walk, her hair grew longer, thicker, and shinier with each passing day. It flowed down her back like a dark river, catching the sunlight and reflecting it in gentle waves. People in the village could not help but notice. Children would point, elders would murmur, and strangers passing through would stare in awe. She was beautiful, yes, but different, and difference had always been dangerous here. At home, life was not so simple. Her aunt, Mama Vio, had a daughter named Vero, who was bald like every other woman in the village. From the very first day Zara arrived at their hut, Mama Vio's heart tightened with something she could not name. It was admiration, yes, but twisted, bitter, and suffocating. How could she love her niece when that same niece carried what her own daughter could never have? Every glance at Zara's hair, every whispered compliment from neighbors, fueled a quiet fire of envy. Why does everyone love her more than my own child? Mama Vio thought bitterly, though she never spoke the words aloud. Her daughter, Vero, watched quietly as Zara combed her hair by the fire, the strands glinting in the dim light. Sometimes Vero smiled, sometimes she frowned, but deep inside, she felt the stirrings of comparison she could not explain. And where comparison lives, resentment is never far behind. Despite this, Zara remained gentle, patient, and kind. She helped with chores, carried water from the stream, and greeted the elders with soft words and a respectful bow. She never argued, even when harsh words or small punishments came her way. The villagers noticed her grace and often praised her in secret. Zara's hair is beautiful, they would say. She is truly blessed. Some admired openly, some quietly, but Mama Vio saw each word as a dagger aimed at her heart. Jealousy is a silent thief. It creeps in slowly, unnoticed at first, until it has rooted itself deep. Mama Vio could no longer contain it. Every smile Zara received, every glance of admiration, made her chest tighten with anger. Each kind word spoken to Zara felt like a reminder of what she herself could never give her daughter. She began to watch Zara more closely, scrutinizing every move, every gesture, every expression. And as her envy grew, so did her hatred, though outwardly, she remained polite, careful, and composed. Zara, meanwhile, remained unaware of the storm brewing around her. She lived with innocence and purity, never questioning why some hearts were so heavy with bitterness. She only knew that her hair was hers, and that her kindness was hers to give. But in the shadows of the hut, a dangerous tension simmered, a tension that would one day explode with consequences far greater than anyone could imagine. Why do people fear what is pure and different? It is a question Zara could not yet answer, but the village would soon show her in ways she could never forget. The air in the village was heavy with anticipation that day. Everyone gathered at the sacred grove, their footsteps soft against the worn earth, their faces a mixture of curiosity and fear. Drums had stopped beating, birds had quieted, and even the wind seemed to pause as the oracle stepped forward. She leaned on her carved staff, her eyes clouded with age, yet her voice carried the weight of truth and prophecy. The villagers fell silent, waiting for the words that could change everything. Then she spoke, "The curse that has bound this village will end, but only through the one who carries what was stolen from us." Her voice echoed through the grove, trembling but firm, and every heart in the crowd skipped a beat. They did not need to ask who she meant. All eyes turned to Zara, the girl with hair, a gift they had never imagined, a miracle they had never known. Zara's legs trembled, her small hands clutched at her dress. She had heard whispers of the prophecy before, but never imagined it would speak her name so clearly, so loudly, for all to hear. The villagers murmured among themselves, some in awe, some in disbelief. But in Mama Vio's heart, a dark knot tightened. A prophecy could not be allowed to flourish, a prophecy could not favor Zara over her own daughter. "This child cannot rise above us, I will see to that," she thought silently, teeth clenched in determination. The oracle continued, "She shall become queen. She shall marry the prince. Through her purity, the curse shall be broken." A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Some women looked at Zara with hope, imagining a future where they too could feel the warmth of hair brushing their shoulders. Others whispered in fear, remembering old stories of curses and retribution. But Mama Vio's mind spun with envy, plotting quietly beneath the surface. How could a child, an orphan, take what years of suffering and obedience had denied her own family? The elders reminded the villagers of the curse that had held them for generations. Long ago, a woman had been wronged and humiliated, and in her sorrow, she had cursed every female child born thereafter. Baldness had been their fate ever since. And now, the oracle's words dared to undo it. Zara, once just another girl in the village, had become the key to their salvation, and to Mama Vio's deepest fear. Zara's heart pounded. She wanted to step forward, to ask questions, to understand what this meant for her. But the weight of the villagers' eyes made her small, and the whispers of fear and jealousy made her hesitate. Could one child really carry the hope of an entire village? The thought made her both proud and terrified. She did not yet know the burden she would bear or the dangers that would soon surround her. The grove was silent once more as the oracle stepped back, her staff tapping the ground softly. The message was clear. Zara's destiny was no longer hers alone. It belonged to the village, to the prophecy, and to the hands that would either nurture her or destroy her. And in that silence, a tension hung thick in the air, signaling that the path ahead would be fraught with challenge, betrayal, and the test of courage. That evening, the hut was quiet, almost unnervingly so. The sun had dipped behind the distant hills, and the shadows stretched long across the floor. Zara returned from the stream, tired and thirsty, her small hands carrying a bundle of water. She had expected nothing more than a quiet night, perhaps a warm meal and the soft comfort of sleep. But nothing that night would be as it seemed. Mama Vio approached her with a sweet, practiced smile, holding a cup of water. "You must be exhausted, my dear," she said softly. "Drink this, and rest your tired body." Zara, trusting and innocent, took the cup without hesitation. The water was cool, soothing, but something in it carried a heaviness she could not sense until it was too late. Within moments, her vision blurred, her limbs grew heavy, and the world tilted beneath her. She collapsed, her small body sinking to the floor as darkness claimed her. When she awoke, it was to a nightmare. Voices screamed around her, loud, angry, and accusing. Her head throbbed, her eyes stung, and her body felt weak, as if every ounce of strength had been stolen. Stones struck her shoulders and legs, harsh and unrelenting. She tried to rise, but a sharp blow sent her sprawling again. Zara's heart raced, terror gripping her chest like a vice. Why is this happening? What have I done? She thought desperately, though the answers would not come. The villagers circled her, shouting accusations. "She is not pure," one cried. "She has disgraced us," another yelled. Children pointed fingers, men shook their heads, women spat near her feet. Zara struggled to speak, her voice breaking with fear. "I did nothing," she cried. "I know no man. I was alone." But her words were drowned by the roar of judgment, the anger of a people who believed what they were told without question. And there, beside her, lay a man who had been paid to lie, a man whose presence sealed her fate in the eyes of the village. His false testimony was enough. Her aunt did not hesitate, her eyes cold and unyielding. Mama Vio pressed her down, holding her small head firmly while another brought forth a sharp blade. Zara's heart froze. "No. Please," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "I am innocent. I am innocent," she repeated to herself over and over, as if saying it might make it true. But in that moment, truth held no power. The villagers had already chosen their verdict. The blade touched her scalp. Strands of her thick, shining hair fell to the ground in heavy clumps. Each cut tore not only at her hair, but at her heart. Her cries echoed into the night, blending with the shouts of those who condemned her and the silence of those who feared to intervene. Zara's identity, her innocence, her very essence, seemed to vanish with each falling strand. The world that had been hers, bright, kind, and gentle, was gone, replaced by pain, betrayal, and a cruel misunderstanding that no child should ever endure. By the time it was over, Zara lay on the dusty ground, shaking and sobbing, completely stripped of the one thing that had set her apart. The villagers dispersed, leaving her alone with the echoes of their condemnation, while Mama Vio and her daughter watched, satisfied that their plan had succeeded. But even as the night pressed in around her, a faint spark remained, hidden deep within, a spark that no betrayal, no lie, could ever truly ease. The village square was crowded, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Men, women, and even children had gathered, forming a tight circle around Zara. Their faces were hard, eyes filled with judgment, anger, and a strange satisfaction at what was about to unfold. Zara's heart pounded so loudly she thought everyone must hear it. She could not understand how those who had once smiled at her could now look upon her with such hatred. "Please," she whispered, raising trembling hands to her head. "I did nothing. I am innocent." But her voice was swallowed by the roar of the crowd. Some shouted approval, some spat in disgust, while others simply stared silently, as if unsure where justice ended and cruelty began. How can they not see the truth? Zara thought, desperation tearing at her chest. She was a child who had only ever tried to be good, yet here she stood, accused of a crime she did not commit, her fate hanging by the cruel whim of others. Her aunt, Mama Vio, stepped forward with calculated calm. She pressed Zara's head down firmly, her hands unyielding. Another woman brought forth a sharp blade, its metal gleaming under the pale sunlight. Zara's eyes widened with terror as she felt the cold touch against her scalp. "No. Please, have mercy," she screamed. Her cries echoed across the square, mixing with the gasps and murmurs of the villagers. Every strand of hair that fell to the dusty ground felt like a piece of her very soul being ripped away. The first cut landed. Dark strands tumbled like fallen rivers, and with each stroke, Zara felt a deep, aching emptiness inside her. Her hair had been her crown, her identity, and the mark of her uniqueness in a world that demanded conformity. Now it was gone, leaving her scalp bare, vulnerable, and exposed. She trembled, tears streaming down her cheeks, powerless against the hands that had once promised care and protection. The crowd's anger seemed to feed itself. Some cheered, some looked away in shame, and some simply watched, silent witnesses to cruelty. Zara's small body shook with sobs, her pleas growing quieter as exhaustion and heartbreak weighed her down. And still, the blade moved, relentless, severing the last remnants of what had made her special. With the final snip, her long, flowing hair lay in a heap at her feet. She collapsed fully, covering her bare head with her hands, feeling the weight of shame and injustice press down upon her. In that moment, the world felt unbearably cold. The villagers dispersed slowly, their whispers trailing behind them like shadows, leaving Zara alone in the center of the square. Mama Vio and her daughter stood off to the side, their expressions unreadable, satisfaction hidden behind composed masks. But even as the humiliation crushed her spirit, a small, stubborn flame remained deep inside Zara, a spark that the lies, the fear, and the cruelty could not extinguish. Could anyone ever understand what it feels like to lose everything for nothing? She thought silently, her heart aching yet quietly defiant. Even in the darkest moments, truth and resilience linger, waiting for their chance to rise again. After that terrible day, the village seemed emptier to Zara, though the streets were still full of people. No one greeted her anymore. Children whispered and pointed as she passed. Women turned their heads quickly, avoiding her gaze. Even the men, who had once shown respect, now looked at her with suspicion and judgment. The village she had known, the place she had called home, had transformed into a world of silence and exclusion. Zara stayed inside the hut, wrapped in a thin cloth, her head bare to the cold air. She no longer laughed, no longer sang, and no longer dreamed aloud. The chores continued, but she moved through them like a shadow, her small body carrying the weight of a spirit that felt broken. Nights were the worst. The moonlight poured in through the window, falling on the smooth curve of her head, reminding her that what had made her special was now gone. Why did this happen to me? She whispered into the darkness, her voice barely audible even to herself. The tears came in quiet streams, each one a question she could not answer, each one a grief she could not share. She asked the ancestors, she asked the sky, she asked the walls of the hut, but no answer came. Only the echo of her own sorrow met her in the stillness. Even when she tried to eat, her appetite left her. Even when she tried to sleep, nightmares filled her mind. The villagers' voices haunted her, shouts, accusations, judgment, replaying endlessly in her memory. She remembered the feel of the blade, the sound of the hair falling, and the look in her aunt's eyes, a mixture of triumph and cruelty. Every memory cut as deeply as the act itself. Days stretched into weeks, and Zara's world grew smaller. She barely spoke, barely moved, barely breathed in the life around her. She watched the village from the window, longing to join the laughter of children, to feel the warmth of a kind word, to belong. But each glance reminded her that she had been stripped of her place, her innocence, her dignity. The world outside seemed alive, full of colors and sounds, yet she could no longer feel part of it. And still, in the quietest moments, beneath the crushing weight of despair, a small voice whispered inside her heart, "I am more than what they have taken from me." It was faint, almost too fragile to hold on to, but it persisted. Even in her silence, even in her suffering, a tiny spark of resilience remained. She did not yet know how it would grow, but it had not died. Can hope survive when the world has turned against you? That question hung in the air, unanswered, yet powerful. For now, Zara waited, hidden from the cruelty of others, nursing the ache in her chest, dreaming silently of the life she might one day reclaim. Days passed in silence, but something miraculous began to stir. Zara reached up absent-mindedly to touch her bare scalp and felt it, tiny, soft strands of hair, delicate but unmistakable. Her breath caught in her throat. Could this really be happening? Hair, impossible in the eyes of the villagers for someone accused of impurity, was growing back on her head. At first, she touched it gently, afraid it might vanish if she disturbed it. Each day, the strands multiplied, thickening, darkening, and curling into the familiar, flowing waves that had once set her apart. Slowly, carefully, she combed them, feeling a spark of hope she had not dared to imagine. Could it be that the truth still lives, even when the world has turned its back? She wondered, a fragile courage blooming in her chest. Word began to spread through the village. At first, whispers, quiet, curious, cautious, traveled from hut to hut. "Look, her hair, it's growing back," someone murmured. Then the whispers turned into questions, questions into murmurs of fear. Mama Vio and her daughter Vero noticed first. The envy that had once fueled their cruelty now twisted into anxiety and dread. If her hair continued to grow, the lie they had woven could be undone, and the truth of Zara's innocence would come to light. The villagers began to watch Zara differently. Some were confused, others afraid, and a few dared to hope. Could it be that the girl they had condemned was pure all along? Their shouts of anger and judgment faded into silence as they saw the evidence with their own eyes. What had seemed like an unchangeable law, the baldness of women born in the village, was now bending before their very eyes. Zara herself felt a quiet vindication, though she kept it guarded. She did not shout, she did not demand apologies. Instead, she allowed the truth to reveal itself naturally, her heart steady and her spirit patient. Every strand that grew was a testament to her innocence, every inch of hair a quiet triumph over the lies and cruelty that had sought to destroy her. Mama Vio, watching from a distance, could not hide the fear etched across her face. The plan she had executed with such confidence now teetered on the edge of ruin. Her daughter Vero looked on as well, her envy giving way to confusion and shame. For the first time, those who had sought to harm Zara felt the weight of their own misdeeds. And through it all, Zara remained gentle, her eyes calm, her movements unhurried, as if the growth of her hair carried not just the proof of her innocence but also the power to heal the hearts of those who had been blinded by jealousy. The village had begun to realize that what is true and just cannot be denied, no matter how deep the lies run. Can a single act of truth shine brighter than a lifetime of deception? The answer, clear in every glimmering strand of Zara's hair, was yes. News of Zara's growing hair reached the palace, carried by whispers and anxious villagers. The king, a man known for his wisdom and fairness, called for an immediate investigation. Guards scoured the village, gathering witnesses, questioning everyone who had been present on the day of her humiliation. The tension was thick, and even those who had once felt certain of Zara's guilt began to feel the tremors of doubt. The man who had been paid to lie beside Zara was brought forward. At first, he hesitated, fear clouding his eyes, but the king's stern gaze left no room for deceit. Trembling, he confessed every detail, the bribery, the lies, the orchestrated scene meant to ruin Zara. The villagers gasped as the truth spilled out, like water breaking through a dam. Mama Vio and her daughter Vero watched in disbelief, their hearts sinking with the weight of exposure. All my schemes, all my envy, undone in a single moment, Mama Vio thought, her chest tight with fear and regret. The king's anger was measured but unmistakable. He decreed that justice must be served. Mama Vio, Vero, and the women who had helped carry out the plan were summoned to repair the wrongs they had caused. They labored under the sun, carrying water and firewood for the village, their pride stripped alongside the false accusations they had planted. The humiliation they had inflicted on Zara now mirrored back upon them, and they could do nothing to hide from it. Zara, meanwhile, was welcomed with open arms. The villagers, once so quick to condemn, now bowed in respect and apology. Children ran to her, women touched her hands reverently, and men lowered their heads in acknowledgement of her innocence. The weight that had pressed on her heart for so long began to lift, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe freely. When the palace doors opened for her to meet the prince, Zara stepped forward with quiet grace. Her hair flowed once more, shining in the sunlight like a testament to the truth. The prince took her hand gently, a silent promise of support and partnership. Together, they knelt before the king, who blessed their union and declared that Zara, pure and unbroken, would break the ancient curse that had plagued the village for generations. The villagers watched in awe, realizing that cruelty and lies could never overpower honesty and virtue. Every act of deception had been exposed, every false accusation undone, and the one who had been wronged was finally honored. Zara did not seek revenge, but the justice she received was undeniable, and in its quiet power, it healed not only her, but the hearts of those who had suffered alongside her. Can truth truly conquer even the deepest lies? The answer was clear in the eyes of every villager, in the restored laughter of children, and in the flowing hair of Zara herself. The day of the wedding dawned bright and golden, as if the sun itself had risen to celebrate Zara's triumph. She stood beside the prince, her hair flowing like a river of midnight silk, her eyes calm yet radiant. The villagers gathered quietly, some in awe, some in shame, as they watched the girl they had once shunned now walk with dignity and grace. Every step she took was a testament to survival, resilience, and the power of truth. As Zara and the prince approached the throne, the air seemed to shimmer with anticipation. The king, solemn and proud, blessed their union, declaring that the curse that had plagued the village for generations would finally be lifted. And then, something extraordinary happened. Women across the village felt it first as a tingling at their scalps, then as tiny strands of hair sprouting where there had been none for decades. Whispers turned to gasps, gasps to laughter, and laughter to joyous tears. The bald village was finally alive again with soft, flowing hair and renewed hope. Zara did not turn her eyes in anger toward those who had wronged her. Instead, she felt a gentle pity, a deep understanding that fear and envy had blinded them. Her aunt and cousin, humbled by their past actions, worked quietly under the sun, carrying water and firewood, learning a lesson in humility that words alone could never teach. Even in their mistakes, there is a chance to learn, Zara thought, her heart forgiving even when it could have burned with anger. The streets, once filled with whispers of shame, now echoed with laughter and joy. Mothers hugged their daughters, feeling the soft strands of hair that symbolized freedom and renewal. Children ran and spun in the sunlight, their hair bouncing, discovering a part of themselves that had been denied for generations. The village, healed at last, remembered the cruelty of the past only as a lesson, not as a chain. Zara, now crowned queen, ruled with wisdom, kindness, and patience. The prince stood by her side, guiding the people with fairness and compassion. Together, they taught that jealousy and hatred can destroy, but courage, truth, and forgiveness can rebuild even the deepest wounds. Every time she walked through the village, women greeted her with respect and love, and Zara knew that her journey, filled with suffering, betrayal, and eventual triumph, had changed not only her life, but the lives of everyone around her. Can one act of bravery and truth really heal generations? Yes, thought Zara, as she looked over the village, her heart full of peace. Every smile, every strand of hair, every note of laughter was proof that innocence and goodness endure.